Okay, so we're going to look a little bit at converting decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals. These things are both very similar to each other and something you will commonly do in many different types of math problems. We'll start off though, the key to doing both of these things is remembering a little bit about place value, right? So place value just means if I had, so for instance, 0.123, let's say that's our decimal, if we had that number, and your math teacher probably wants you to say 123 thousandths. We've got a couple of things here. We've got the 1 that is currently in the tenths place. We've got the 2 that is in the hundredths place. And then we've got the 3, which is in the thousandths place. Now it could keep going on and on. We could have 10 thousandths, 100 thousandths. But for most of our purposes, just thinking about those first 3 things is important. So if we can remember those things, that means, for example, if I had that just this, it would be 1/10. If I had, for example, just the 1 and the 2, we would say that's 12/100th. Or if I had all 3 of them, which I do right there, we would read that as 123 thousandths. Okay, so if we're turning decimals to fractions, all we need to do is really just read it and write it. And so what I mean by that is 0.1, and you're supposed to turn that into a fraction. Well, you can know the 1 is in the tenths place, so you would read that as 1/10. And that right there is a fraction, 1/10. If I had the decimal 0.2, which we would read as 2/10, we would just simply write it as 2/10. Now we always want to simplify our fractions, so we could divide both of those by 2, and that would give us 1/5. If I had something like 0.25, again, that's 2 digits after the decimal, so we were talking hundredths, so that's 25 hundredths. So again, if I can just read it, 25 100ths. And then I, of course, have to always simplify, and I get 1/4, right? So pretty straightforward. If I had something, let's just a couple more. If I had something like 0.08, again, that 8 is in the hundredths place, so we could say that is equal to 8 100ths, and then always simplify. That gives us 2/25. Or if I had something like 0.203, right, a really large one, we'd be like, okay, that's 203 thousandths, 203 thousandths. And then sometimes you can't simplify, right? 203 is a prime number, so I can't simplify that any further. And then as one last example, let's say you had something like with a whole number in it. So like 2.4, you just can read that again, 2 4/10. If I can read it, I can write it. So that equals 2 4/10. Make sure I simplify my fraction. So I get 2 2/5. So I've just converted all of those decimals into fractions simply by remembering the place value and reading it and writing it. Okay, and so the next thing we're going to look at is, okay, so what if I'm going backwards? What if I'm going the other way? So you can see right here, we've got fractions to decimals. At the top of my page, I still have the tenths, hundredths, and thousandths is what I want to be thinking of. Okay, thinking about that place value. We've got 2 real ways to do this. One is, option 1 on the left is to make an equivalent fraction with 10, 100, or 1000 as the denominator, and then simply we follow that same idea, sort of read it and write it. So for example, let's say you had 1/10, right? Again, you can read it 1/10. You know that the tenth is the first digit after the decimal, so you just simply write it as that, okay? Now, I already had 10 as a denominator, so that was really straightforward. If I had something like 3/5, I'm going to think about that denominator and think, can I turn it into a 10, 100, or 1000? Yes, I can. I can make an equivalent fraction. If I multiply it by 2, I also have to do the same thing to the numerator, and that gives me 6/10, and so 0.6 is how we would do that. So again, we just made a equivalent fraction with 10 as the denominator. If I had something like 3/25, again, I can't turn 25ths into tenths, but I can turn that by multiplying it by 4. I can turn that into 12 100ths. Or 12 hundredths, and then again, if I think of hundredths, I can just think, okay, that's the second digit equals 0.12, or 12 hundredths. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. Again, if you can easily turn that denominator into a power of 10, like a 10, 100, or 1,000. Now we do need to make sure that we're careful. Let's say you had something like 3/100ths. Okay, I've already got 100 as my denominator, but when I write that, I want to make sure I skip that 0 right there and go straight to my hundredths place value. Okay, sometimes I see when people see a 3 on top and 3/100ths, they forget to go over and give that extra space. The other option when you are turning a fraction into a decimal is simply to, you can see right here, it says divide the numerator by the denominator. So let's say you had a fraction like 1/8, and you're like, oh, I can't easily turn that 8 into a 10 or 100. You might know what to multiply to get 1,000, but you probably don't off the top of your head. So you're just going to divide the numerator, that's the top number, by the denominator. So that's a little bit of long division. So I'm going to put 1 inside the box and dividing by 8. I'm going to have to put my decimal point and put a 0. And so it'll go 1 time. Minus 8 gives me a 2. I'm going to keep bringing stuff down and doing my long division until I finish the problem or I get a repeating decimal. So in this case, I've got no more remainder, nothing left there. So I'm going to put my decimal point straight up. So I would get 0.125. So 1/8 is equal to 0.125. And again, I just got that by dividing the numerator by the denominator. You might also have a situation where, let's say I had something like 2/9. And so I would put 2 inside and I'm dividing by 9. I'm going to put my decimal point, goes in 2 times, minus 18. Gives us another 2. Bring 0 down. 2 times, minus 18. Gives me another 2. Bring a 0 down. And I might start to see I'm repeating myself over and over at this point. And so I'm not going to keep doing that because I could do that forever. I'm going to put my decimal point straight up. And then I'm going to write this as, extend my space down a little bit. I could have 2/9 is equal to 0.2, and I'm going to put this line over it. That line on top of the 2 means it's a repeating decimal. It means we'd keep going on and on and on and on forever. We'll do one last example and kind of like squeeze it in here. If I had something like 16/3, so maybe you started with an improper fraction, or maybe you started with a mixed number that you turned into an improper fraction, right? So I'm dividing. It's okay if you have that. So I would just do 16 divided by 3. Goes in 5 times. Minus 15 is 1. Bring down. Sorry, getting a little bit messy here. Minus 9 is 1. Another thing. Bring down, and I see that I'm starting to repeat. I'm kind of off the page there, but we're going to keep going on and on. And so we would see that that is our decimal point, again, goes straight up there. And so we would have 5.33. So this would equal 5.3 with that line on top of 3, which means the 3 keeps repeating on and on forever, right? So fractions to decimals, decimals to fractions. Key thing is just really thinking about that place value. And that 0, the tenths, hundredths, and thousandths, and really just reading it and writing it, and that works kind of both ways. Good luck.